Welcome back to God is Alive. My name is Serena, and here I speak all about what it truly means to have a personal relationship with God. We have faith every day that we'll wake up tomorrow, so I want to start a fire in your heart to stop chasing the temporary things of this world and to put that same faith in God. So let's learn about God and learn to lean on God, because what's the worst that could happen? Welcome back to God is Alive. My name is Serena, and today we're talking about sin is so normalized. Sin is very normalized, and it's not like we're the first generation to experience this. This has been going on forever. So today I just kind of wanted to talk about living in a society that values and normalizes sin. And so the first thing I really wanted to talk about today was no one's perfect. We all fall short. We all need grace. We all need mercy. We all need Jesus. And being righteous and blameless before God is not something we can achieve on our own strength. It's a gift when we believe. So although when we believe we become right with God, we still live in a world or a society where sin is normalized, and that poses some challenges. The Bible explains that the prince of this world is Satan. He is the ruler of this world. And it makes sense because as we look around in our world today, we see a lot of things are starting to go against God's ways, his morals, what he thinks is good for us. We're trying to do another thing. Now, we can't force anyone to do anything. That's not what I'm trying to do. But when you're someone that's trying to follow God's ways and grow closer to him, but you're also existing in this world, it becomes hard, because as my last podcast number 93, I talked about how sin is very tempting. And when sin is already very tempting, combined with normalized and sometimes even valued, now it's a struggle. Now it's a full-on struggle. But it makes sense that sin is so normalized in our world, because our world is not run by God. Let me explain. This world is held up by him, and it keeps going because he says it does. But ultimately, his creation, everything that he's created, has free will. And therefore, the world that we live in, many of us and those around us don't follow him, don't follow his ways. So we're not living in his ideal world, in the sense where this is not like the paradise that he had envisioned for us. This is what we've created for us, what we've chosen. And I find it so interesting that the more and more we insist on going our way and going further and further apart from God's ways, the more enslaved we become to things that will never satisfy us, were never meant to satisfy us. And it's not like God gives us commandments and rules to follow, good and bad, to stay away from, so that he can limit us and control us. He does it because he cares for us. He does it because he knows what's best for us. We have every right to experience and to live and to enjoy in the parameters that he has set for us. We can still live our best life and experience everything that this life has to offer without sinning. Not to say that we're never going to, we're not perfect. But if we're living a life surrounded by sin, that is going to have precedence in our mind over God. And let me be frank here. I've found putting anything in this world above God, meaning putting your focus on it, your attention on it, spending more time thinking about this thing than you do about God and your relationship with God, it's going to be an idol. It's going to be a sin in your heart, and it's going to set you back. And it's tough because we have an invisible God. But when we look around and when we dive into his word, dive into prayer time, spend more time with him, he becomes 10 times more evident in our life. But he's not going to be if we're not really focused on him, if we're not really answering the call. You know, there's a verse in the Bible, Romans chapter 1, verses 26 through 27, where Paul is talking about a specific sin, but it wasn't worse than another one. But in this example, He was trying to explain how pain and suffering comes from seeking identity, seeking love, intimacy in ways that are apart from God's ways. What I'm trying to say is that Paul explains in Romans that pain and suffering truly comes from us trying to satisfy our needs in ways that never will truly satisfy those needs. And so the reason why I'm saying all this is because if we're going to live in a world where sin is so normalized, but we are going to try to be believers who don't steer towards that, then we have to have a good foundation. We have to remind ourselves that pain and suffering has come about due to sin. The fact that we need grace and mercy, the fact that Jesus had to die on the cross for us was because of sin, was because of us going against God. And I know that God is an all-loving God and that he did these things and that we're not perfect. But I think if we lose sight of this, it's really easy to be focused on what this world values and what's going on around us. And it's a lot harder to be set apart, to act set apart, to remember you're set apart. And so I think that's part of the gospel, and I think that's part of having a relationship with God, is he almost challenges you to be set apart, to be sanctified. He wants you to take a step away from the crowd and try to find him, try to pursue him. You know, Romans chapter 1 verse 11, it says, "For I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you." Paul wrote that. But when you read a lot of the books in the New Testament, you see how a lot of them are written by the disciples, explaining why Jesus is king, explaining why he is who he says he is. And in a way, Paul here, what he's trying to say is, I want to strengthen you, and I want you to remember that Jesus was the plan all along. Key words, remember Jesus. We can't lose sight of him as we're living in this world. And honestly, every time I do lose sight of him, I'm like, oh, where's my Jesus? Because I need him. You know, Romans chapter 1 verse 16, Paul writes, "I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek." You know, what he's trying to say here is, sure, yes, it began with Israel, but it was always God's intention, and it was always his plan to bless all the nations, to bless all the people since the beginning. Genesis chapter 12 verse 3. God promises Abraham, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And hundreds of years before Jesus even came on the scene, Isaiah prophesied in chapter 53 verse 5 of the book of Isaiah, "But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed." So the main point I'm trying to make with this podcast is I feel like if we truly have our eyes, our hearts, our minds, our souls, our everything focused on him, on his promise, on what he's done, we're going to keep in step with him. We're going to stay and remain on the same page as him. And therefore, when we're walking in this world, even when we're with non-believers, even when we're with people that don't care about God, don't know God, we're going to be able to remain grounded on our foundation because we do. That's the goal. And so, yeah, I know it sucks that sin is so normalized in this world and that we have to endure it and remain strong through it when it feels like everyone else gets kind of like the easy route. But the truth is, we have to stand back and realize they don't have the easy route. They're just coping in the way that they know how. And we used to do that. And we know how that's like. And there's a reason why we're trying to move differently, act differently, choose differently. Because we've been there, done that. And we know that in the end, God doesn't want us engaging in things that's potentially going to hurt us or chain us mentally or emotionally. He doesn't want us doing anything that's going to damage our relationship with him. And therefore, he doesn't want us playing around with sin. So I think as long as we keep our eyes on our prize and don't let our thoughts drift off, take every thought, capture it, and make it obedient to Christ, our walk shouldn't be as hard as it seems. But it's always easier said than done. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in to the very end. Today's song of the day is Who Can by Cochren and Co. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and as always, I'll talk to you again next time.